And to make matters worse, for the case, the statute of limitations for falsifying business records has expired. Welcome back, guys, of David Pecker from the National Enquirer, the company AMI, as a witness for the prosecution. The prosecutor starts by asking him how old he is. He answers 72. Asked what he does now, he answers he's now a consultant, including for American media, AMI. Asked what AMI does, he answers that it publishes celebrity magazines, including the National Enquirer, The Globe, In Touch, Star, Flex, and that he was a chairman and CEO, where previously he owned 10%. Prosecutor asking, did you have final say on what would be published and what not would be published? He answered that we used checkbook journalism where we paid for stories. There was a $10,000 limit, and if it was more than $10,000, it would have to be vetted by him. Asked what were editor meetings, he replied that he would consider the cover meetings because they were the most important ones. Asked, are you here under subpoena? He responds, yes. Asked, who is Mr. Dylan Howard? He said he was the chief editor at the time. Prosecutor, when it came to juicy stories, did he run these by you personally? He responded, yes. That was a big part of his job. Asked about sources, he responds, limousine drivers, people who work for lawyers, lawyers themselves, people like that. Asked where Mr. Dylan Howard is currently, he responds that he's now in Australia. Asked if Mr. Howard currently has health issues, objection overruled. Remember, he's only testifying for the prosecution under subpoena, so he's forced to be there. Okay, so he's asked by the prosecutor about Mr. Trump. Mr. Pecker says he's sitting there wearing a blue suit. Prosecutor asking, how was your relationship to the defendant after you purchased the National Enquirer? Mr. Pecker responded that the former president introduced him to a lot of people in New York. He proposed a Trump-style magazine, but when he brought it up to the defendant, he was asked, who would it be for? Asked about his relationship during The Apprentice, Mr. Pecker replied that during The Apprentice and Celebrity Apprentice, if someone was going to be fired, on the show, the defendant or his team would give him the information first, that it was good for his magazines. Prosecutor, what would you call him? Mr. Pecker replied, Donald. Asked if this changed during 2015, he responded, yes. That as he was running for president, he would actually see him more often. On top of that, they spoke more often as well. Asked if he spoke with her secretary named Rana Graff and even his bodyguard named Keith Schiller. Mr. Pecker responded, yes, both. Asked when and where he met Mr. Cohen. Mr. Pecker replied that he first met Mr. Cohen at a bar mitzvah back in 2000. Furthermore, the defendant actually introduced him to Mr. Cohen in 2007 on a separate occasion. That at the time the defendant told him that he was living in one of his condos, and the former president told Mr. Pecker to let Mr. Cohen know if there are any incoming stories about him, if there are any rumors about him. Prosecutor asking, from 2015 to 2017, how often did you speak to Mr. Cohen? Mr. Pecker replied, weekly, sometimes daily. Asked if he knows Hope Hicks. He responded yes, that she was the defendant's communications director, also working for his daughter's beauty business. Mr. Pecker continues, saying that funny enough, once the defendant, the former president, was running for president the first time, that his magazine would actually do very well when he was on the cover, that his magazine would sell best with him on the cover. Mr. Pecker said that the former president was seen as the boss because of his TV show, The Apprentice, that he ran a poll for the magazine and that 80% of the readership of the National Enquirer wanted him to run for president. Furthermore, he added that Michael Cohen himself invited Mr. Pecker to the announcement of the former president actually running. Asked if he attended a meeting at the Trump Tower in mid-August, he responded yes, that Michael Cohen had told him the boss wanted to see him. Mr. Pecker said they wanted to see what my magazine could do for the campaign, saying I saw we could publish positive stories about Mr. Trump and negative stories about other candidates, saying that I would also notify Michael Cohen if a woman's story about him was being sold. Mr. Pecker adding that Mr. Trump was known as the most eligible bachelor, dating the most beautiful women. Prosecutor asking, did the names Bill and Hillary come up? He responded, yes, that Hillary was running all while Bill's womanizing was out in the open, which she enabled. Mr. Pecker said that he would cover it because the readership loved it, adding that the former president was pleased that he would do it. On top of that, Michael Cohen was also pleased. Prosecutor displaying a series of exhibits, asking, are these a series of pro-Trump headlines? With the judge chiming in that these are not to be taken as truth. Mr. Pecker then says that Michael Cohen would say to him that we would like to run a negative story against a candidate, let's say Ted Cruz. Mr. Pecker said that Michael Cohen would send him negative information regarding the candidate. On top of that, Mr. Michael Cohen told me he was not with the campaign, the official campaign. Prosecutor asking a good question. What did you understand the relationship to be between Michael Cohen and the official campaign? Objection overruled. Mr. Pecker saying that Michael Cohen was physically there at the Trump Tower, the campaign office at the time. Prosecutor introduces a series of articles, one titled Bungling Surgeon, Dr. Ben Carson Left Sponge in a Patient's Brain, Ted Cruz Shamed by a Porn Star. Prosecutor, did you run these stories on the National Enquirer? Mr. Pecker said, oh yes. We would also send PDFs to Michael Cohen pre-publication. Asked if he published the article titled Donald Trump Blasts Ted Cruz's Dad for photo with JFK's assassin. Mr. Pecker said, oh yes, we did that too. Asked about Steve Bannon, Mr. Pecker said that he sent him a bunch of articles related to Hillary Clinton, even sending articles to his apartment on the Upper West Side. Asked, did Steve Bannon ever pitch articles to you? Objection overruled. Okay guys, so I have to jump in here and kind of explain what is going on and why the questioning regarding Bannon is kind of an important part of this case. Well, if you hate the man, you probably don't care. Okay, so the big deal is that he has been indicted on felony charges. Now, there's a tricky part here. In order for the felony charges to have been triggered by the falsification of business records, to qualify as a felony, these charges require an intent to defraud that includes an intent to commit another crime or to aid or conceal another crime. Therefore, they need two. The defendant would need to have broken two laws, and that is a big deal. So remember, the first one is falsifying business records, and for that to be a felony, there needs to be that second violation, a second crime, to turn it into a felony, into a serious crime. So when the prosecutor is asking David Pecker if he was in contact with the election campaign, that is essentially to bring it all in to cover a charge, the second violation of a law under New York. Specifically when Mr. Pecker is being asked about his contacts with Bannon regarding the election, asking if he was aiding in the catch and kill scheme regarding the stories dealing with the election. When the defense objected, the prosecution said this is all relevant to the state election law. The state election law under question is under section 17152. Up on the screen here, it is under the conspiracy to promote or prevent an election, reading that any two or more persons who conspire to promote or prevent the election of any person to a public office by unlawful means, and which conspiracy is acted upon by one or more of the parties thereto, shall be guilty of a misdemeanor. A misdemeanor, but theoretically coupled with the falsification of business records, pumps it up to a felony, the legal theory. This is kind of problematic because what they're saying is that a person promoting themselves as a candidate is illegal because the defendant was himself the candidate, conspiring to unlawfully promote yourself by paying money to essentially squash stupid, embarrassing stories that would make you look bad. That is the problem with this case, because as the prosecution themselves said, it's not illegal to promote yourself as a candidate. It's not illegal for NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, and the statute is for New York state law, which makes no sense here because, of course, this was a federal national election, and even if such money was paid for a bunch of salacious actions. So even if all these things were paid out of pocket or classified as a legal expense, well, that is actually not an illegal offense. This is why the case kind of has a lot of problems. So calling this whole thing an illegal conspiracy just looks a bit weak. Well, if you hate the man, you probably don't care. But legally, it is extremely weak. And worse for prosecutors, this was previously investigated, looked into, and they dropped it because they didn't think it was strong enough to bring the case forward. Even if you hate the guy, it looks really bad. And to make matters worse, for the case, the statute of limitations for falsifying business records has expired. So coupling it with the New York statute regarding the elections, Section 17152, they were able to revive this whole thing using legal ninjutsu to prompt it into a felony regarding a federal election. Michael Colangelo was a former top official at the Justice Department, so this guy knows exactly what he's doing in terms of utilizing his legal martial arts skills to essentially bring this whole case forward. Using these statutes would actually make more sense if the defendant was not the candidate. Prosecutor asking, when you were the CEO of AMI, did the business records include invoices and NDAs, non-disclosure agreements? He responded yes. Asked if he's reviewed a bunch of emails in a thumb drive. He responds yes. Asked if they were collected because of a search warrant. He responded yes. Objection overruled, but the judge says that to some extent there is embedded hearsay, but he'll deal with it as they come up. Prosecutor, have you heard of Dino Sajudin? He says yes, that he was selling a story about the former president having an illegitimate daughter with a maid, saying, I told Mr. Cohen about it because of our August agreement, and Mr. Cohen said he would verify the information and call back. Mr. Pecker continues that I told Dylan that we would prepare a source agreement and that Dino should take a polygraph test. Asked what a source agreement is, he says with a tipster we get exclusive rights, say about 90 days. Asked if he did a source agreement with Mr. Sajudin, Dino Sajudin, he said yes, that on top of that they arranged a $500 polygraph test. The prosecutor chimes in saying, please do not speak to any polygraph test results. Very interesting there, which kind of just makes you curious, was the guy lying? Nonetheless, Mr. Pecker says that we bought the story for $30,000 and that Mr. Cohen told me that the former president would take a DNA test at the time. He's of German descent and the woman was Hispanic. So I guess they're alluding to that if they paid $30,000, then maybe the story was true because of the polygraph test. But they're not allowing or introducing the polygraph test results. So it's kind of interesting. Prosecutor asking, why did you buy it? Mr. Pecker said that if the story was true, that it would be the biggest seller since the death of Elvis Presley. Elvis Presley, of course, the greatest musician to have ever lived. Now the prosecutor puts up Dino Sajudin's contract. They have it on display. They ask Mr. David Pecker to read it. Mr. Pecker starts reading it. $30,000 as set forth below. We hired an investigator and found the story to be 1,000% untrue. Prosecutor, why did you pay? Mr. Pecker said that if another outlet got the story, he would be embarrassed. Prosecutor, what did Michael Cohen say about all of this? Mr. Pecker said to lock him in until after the election. Asked if there was ever a time that he was released from the contract. Mr. Pecker said yes. Asked who was Karen McDougal, he responded that she was a Playboy model who was trying to sell her story regarding a relationship she had with the former president that lasted about a year. When I told Mr. Michael Cohen about it, he said it was not true. But I responded to him that I wanted to vet it. Prosecutor asking if he discussed paying for the Karen McDougal story. Mr. Pecker responded no, saying I told Mr. Michael Cohen that we will keep him apprised. Mr. Pecker went on to say that he sent out Mr. Dylan Howard, the guy that's in Australia now, he sent him out to California, where Mr. Howard met with Keith Davidson, Karen McDougal's attorney, adding that during this time, I spoke with Michael Cohen and that he kept on calling me back numerous times, more anxious each time. Well, that was it for the day. Very interesting, these backdoor deals with the National Enquirer. I get it, some people hate the man, some people really hate the man. I think it's kind of silly, but who knows? Some people see anything and everything dealing with the former president as basically meaning he's guilty and should be thrown in jail for 1,000 years, of course. But all these goofy bullshit stories run by the National Enquirer are just kind of a joke. But what's interesting is, unlike the National Enquirer, that of course is a celebrity rag, so some people see it as a double standard, a two-tier justice system, because the other side did the same thing with Russia when that campaign paid for all the Russia stories. Widely reported by The Hill, Washington Post, and everybody else. They all said it, but apparently nobody is trying to throw them in jail. So there's all that. It's a little messy. Anyway, so on one side we have the whole Russia stories that were purchased, and on the other side we have National Enquirer stories that were also purchased. So you be the judge, because to me it's one big kabuki theater. It is all just BS. Two-tiered legal justice system in this courtroom, and then Judge Merchant said, are you saying there are two systems of justice in this courtroom? They're basically throwing punches at each other. Attorney Blanche says Mr. Wieselberg is in jail. Michael Cohen is not. Of course, the implication that Attorney Blanche is making is that Michael Cohen has helped the prosecution against, of course, the former president, whereas Mr. Wieselberg apparently was not able to cut a deal and was thrown in jail. The entertainment continues. And just a heads up, it does take a long time to edit these videos, of course. Make sure you hit that notification bell since I upload at random times. This way, you're notified when I upload a video. Alright guys, well that's it for this one. Thanks for joining. Please don't forget to smash the like, subscribe if you haven't. I'll see you in the next one.